Today, we're going to talk about a true legend. A man's life story is every bit as haunting and beautiful as his music. I'm talking about the jazz trumpeter and singer Chet Baker. His entire life was this incredible paradox, a story of just staggering talent and, well, some really devastating personal demons. To really get Chet Baker, you have to look at these two photos. Seriously. On the left, you've got the icon of the 1950s, the Adonis. They called him the James Dean of jazz. And on the right, that's the man he became in the 1980s. A critic once said his face looked like a map of the back roads of hell. So how on earth does one become the other? Well, that's the story we're going to unravel today. All right, so let's start at the beginning. Because before all the tragedy, there was the talent, this raw, instinctual gift that would crown him the Prince of Cool. What's so amazing is how he got there. I mean, this wasn't some kid from a fancy music conservatory. He was born in Oklahoma, moved out to California, and pretty much taught himself to play by ear. And because of that, his whole approach was different. While all the other cats were chasing that fast, loud, aggressive bebop sound, Baker was listening to Miles Davis's Birth of the Cool. He was drawn to that more lyrical, more chilled-out style. And that one choice, man, it would define everything. And it didn't take long for the greats to notice. In 1952, he gets his big break playing with the one and only Charlie Parker. When Parker went back to New York, he told the other jazz giants on the scene, "There's a little white cat on the coast who's going to eat you up." I mean, can you imagine a better endorsement? The entire jazz world was officially put on notice. So, this incredible, raw talent quickly became the poster boy for a whole new movement in jazz, what we now call the West Coast sound. He teams up with the Jerry Mulligan Quartet, and this group was a total game changer for one huge reason. They had no piano. Now, that might not sound like a big deal, but it was. It forced Baker's trumpet and Mulligan's sax to have this delicate, intricate conversation. It's called linear counterpoint. Without a piano laying down all the thick chords, the sound was just light, airy, and transparent. It was the very definition of cool. And his version of My Funny Valentine perfectly shows off his genius. See, it wasn't about the notes he played. It was all about the notes he didn't play. He used the space, the silence, to build this incredible emotional tension. It was a masterclass in holding back, and it became his absolute signature. So then, just when everyone thought they had him pegged, he decides to sing. And everyone told him it was a bad idea. But his voice? Wow. It was just as revolutionary as his trumpet playing. He didn't boom like a classic crooner. He kind of whispered. It was this fragile, almost androgynous sound. And that intimate style became a massive influence, especially on the bossa nova scene that was bubbling up in Brazil. That album, Chet Baker Sings, was just packed with songs that felt like they were telling his life story before it even happened. I Fall in Love Too Easily basically became his theme song, and when you listen to The Thrill Is Gone today, it just feels like this spooky, haunting prediction of the darkness that was right around the corner. Because right alongside his growing fame, a shadow was growing too, an addiction to heroin that would dog him for the rest of his life. And this is where the story of the Adonis really starts to take a tragic turn. He packed up and moved to Europe in the late 50s, probably looking for a fresh start, but his troubles followed him. His life just became this chaotic mess of arrests, jail time, and getting deported from one country after another. This whole downward spiral came to a head in 1966, when he was back in California and got brutally beaten over a drug deal. Now, for a trumpet player, the embouchure, that's the way your lips and facial muscles form a seal around the mouthpiece. It's everything. It's their entire craft. The assault knocked out his front teeth. It completely destroyed his ability to play. Just like that, his instrument was silenced. For pretty much any other musician, that would have been the end of the story. Career over. But for Chet Baker, it became this brutal, agonizing rebirth. He literally had to relearn his entire art form from scratch. And the process was just awful. He was totally broken. He had to take a job pumping gas just to get by. After years of silence, he finally got dentures and started the painful, agonizing process of teaching his mouth how to form notes on the trumpet again. And when he finally came back to music in the 70s, he was a completely different person with a completely different sound. His early style was all about that detached, lyrical cool. But his leader style, it was something else entirely. It was darker. It was fragile. You could literally hear the breath, the struggle, the pain in every single note. It was like all the suffering he'd been through was now coming directly out of the bell of his horn. And it's really this later period that cemented his legacy, not as the Prince of Cool, but as the architect of a sound that was built from pure, unvarnished melancholy. One of his contemporaries said this about him, and it just perfectly captures the feeling of his later music. There was a real desperation in his playing, this feeling that the music itself was the only thing keeping him here. And technically, what he was doing was remarkable. He never wasted a single note. Where other players would show off with a flashy run, Chet would just find the three most perfect, most heartbreaking notes and let them hang in the air. He stripped every song down to its raw emotional core. There was nothing left but pure honesty. And his influence is just massive. I mean, it's everywhere. From the birth of bossa nova all the way to modern indie artists like Elliott Smith or Lana Del Rey, you can hear Chet's DNA in any music that chooses vulnerability and quiet intensity over flashy look-at-me technique. His life ended just as tragically as he lived it. On May 13th, 1988, at 58 years old, he fell from his hotel window in Amsterdam. And inside his room, police found the two things that had really defined his later years: his trumpet and his drugs. To this day, his death is still a mystery. Was it a tragic accident? Was it suicide? Or was it foul play? Maybe something related to his drug habits? We'll probably never know for sure. And that ambiguity just kind of adds to the tragic myth of Chet Baker. And that kind of leaves us with this one big, lingering question. Chet Baker's life was undeniably a tragedy, but his music is a source of just profound, undeniable beauty. So it forces you to ask, is there a link? Does great art require great suffering? His life and his music, they certainly don't give us any easy answers.